start with cameras. Let's dig in a little more deeply now that we are, our pavilion is complete and we are creating views and renderings now. So let's dig a little deeper into our cameras. So up here at the quick access toolbar, we could find our camera. Got our camera, and we are in a floor plan, and I have everything else. It's the only thing I have open, and I'm going to drop it down on the deck and pull it out and extend it beyond the building. And that is my view right there. And when I'm trying to fine tune a view, I like to come to View, Tile Views, and just have these two open so that I could work and adjust my view. And then in my right hand here, I have my floor plan with my camera visible. And if I click here off to the side, I lose my camera, and then all I have to do is come back here and I right click. I'm in the project browser with my section. I right click and I say show the camera, and it appears again. Am I in the wrong section? That was the wrong one. See, that's odd. So this is the wrong camera, but it shows regardless. It showed there even though that one's not open. So let us not show that camera. So we are at 3D view 1. 3D view 1 right there, the last one. So a demonstration that you could show the wrong camera. Show the camera, and there it is. So there I am on the deck, the proper camera. Okay. So a couple things. Here's the target, and as I move this guy forwards and backwards, it doesn't seem to change, you know, looking over here, it doesn't seem to change significantly. I mean, it's bouncing around as I do this, but doesn't seem to really adjust like the amount of information that's in the view. Here in the back, this guy, that will adjust it. So right there, I could cut short. I could actually not show you the interior part of the pavilion if I wanted to. And if you had a complicated building, that's something you might want to consider. I could also move over here and take a couple steps into the pool, swing the target more to my left. So manipulating it here in plan while keeping an eye on the left-hand screen to see it in 3D, of course. So very important. Okay, so that's that. So cameras have eye and target elevations when you go in and drop a camera in. One kind of an interesting point that I was watching a longer video on all about these, and they made the point that if you come here and you create a default 3D view, so I've created another one here. So now I have three things open, and that's the one I just created. That you have it also, just by default, it also comes with eye and target elevation. So even though there's not a camera here, it's essentially the same thing. It essentially kind of functions the same way. You just don't have the camera to move around and manipulate, but the information here in the property box is the same. Kind of interesting. Okay, so that is that. So when we come in here, so let us get back to this view. Let us show the camera. There's my camera. Selecting my camera. And the projection mode is in perspective. That is good. We want that. Let's take a look at what orthographic looks like. Apply. No, that is not what we want. So that's setting it an actual orthographic view, like kind of creating an elevation out of this view. So that's kind of interesting, but definitely not what we want. Let's go back one more time. The perspective is correct. Apply. Okay. So I got the show camera, and here, this is called the crop region. We want to be able to see that as well, because that's also how we manipulate things. So down here at the bottom, we have hide crop region right there. So it's kind of a frame and a light bulb. and I could hide that. I'm not sure why you'd want to hide it, but that is it's shown, and then we can select it obviously and move these nodes to help frame our image. Okay, so that's simple. Also, very important is here, another way to move around is the full navigation wheel. Okay, so we can click, kind of left click on the icon. If we drop it, we can see that there are numerous types of wheels, but we're just going to look at the full navigation wheel. So I'm just going to kind of click here on the icon and come on over here, and I'm just going to actually go back, view, tab view, so I could see this thing on the big screen. So we have a lot of options here, actually. And so I'm zooming. So I'm just coming in here and left click and holding. And I could zoom. And it is moving the camera as I do this. So if we saw it in plan, we would see the camera moving as well. We could orbit. So I just click on the word orbit and hold it down. So I could orbit. And it is adjusting the eye and target elevations of the camera as I do that. We can see that here on the right. So my eye, the camera, is up at 8 feet, and I am looking down towards the ground. So now as I do this, you can see my camera is going up to 12 feet, up to 20 feet, and my eye remains yeah, so this just seems to adjust really the eye and not the target. We could pan left and right. We could also, interestingly, rewind. I could hold that, and then these are all of the stills that I just went through. So if there was one that I liked back there, I could just lock in and keep it. We could walk. This takes a little practice. Just kind of slowly strolling there. So just left click and put a nice way to move in towards a more confined space. Let's see, looking. We could just move our head around. And that is dropping the target. Okay, so that's the opposite of orbit, right? Oh, orbit now is moving both of them. Kind of interesting. So some combination of orbit and looking are moving those numbers, obviously, up and down. So this is again, both things moving together. So a lot of interesting ways to manipulate this. And let me just shut the wheel down and jump back into my tile views. And my camera didn't actually go too far. I didn't move around that much. Another point, though, so that's the full navigation wheel. One other thing that I wanted to mention, cameras, when we're discussing this, when I was unclear, I referred to it like a SketchUp camera, and I wanted to find the focal length of it, which is actually from an actual film camera. They have focal lengths, so that refers to kind of how many millimeters the lens is. So you could have panoramic lenses that would be like maybe at like 10 or 15 degrees. A normal, what we quote unquote normal lens, is probably around 40 to 50. A 35 millimeter lens is a little wider of a frame. And then when you get into like telephoto lenses, you're getting into 100, 200 millimeter lenses. And it affects the depth of field. Not that it does do that, but it affects the kind of the left to right. How panoramic, how fisheye or not it is. Revit, long story short now, Revit only comes with like a 50 millimeter lens. There's no other, you can't change it out. In SketchUp, you could change it out easily, so this is kind of surprising for Revit that I just can't plug in, I want a 35 millimeter lens or a 100 millimeter lens. What I have to do is come here and adjust these guys here. So that's kind of adjusting the field of view. What that does, and the friendly advice that I heard in the video was that the more you do this, you see, so now I'm adjusting it far to the right, and as I do that, this arm is opening up very far to the right, and that creates distortion. So the more that you move this thing around, these numbers aren't changing here. But the more that you move this thing around, the more that this arm and the target are going to move. And that creates distortion. The fact that this arm is not mirrored with this arm is what is creating distortion here with this pool. Generally, these two should mirror each other. So if I bring this all the way back, now it's moving back to closer to mirror, and mirrored. So, but we still have distortion over here. But that's me looking down too far, perhaps. And now distortion in terms of things leaning, and just even really distortion beyond leaning, is now reduced to basically nothing. Okay. Another important point. So about the eye and target elevation. So there is a little bit of distortion here. Things are leaning a little bit, and that happens whenever your eye and target are not the same. So if, for instance, if we look down at our feet, eye elevation, or now we look up. So we move down, put our head down on the ground, and we want to look up, and let's just exaggerate this a little further. Let's look up to 16 feet. So now we're really looking up, and these walls are starting to lean. That's the effect of when you're standing under a high-rise building and you look up, and of course it's called parallax, and that's when lines converge. If you're at the bottom of a skyscraper looking up, it's to be expected. Here, in such a small building like this, you really wouldn't expect things to converge up or down. So that's another type of distortion that in a small building like this you should avoid. So if we bring this guy back to 5 feet, and back to 5 feet, and apply, and now our lines are running parallel to each other. All vertical lines are parallel and not converging up or down. And we would have the same if we took the eye up into the sky and made that 25. And now they are converging down. They are leaning away from each other up at the top. Okay? So we have to be careful with that. Not a 0, just a 5, and apply, and good. And one last thing. This is kind of up here is the orient to view wheel. So by clicking on this thing, we orient to a different view, and it's kind of fun to play with. It's completely. I'm nowhere near where I dropped my camera forever ago. So, you should come in and check out these views and explore the building in different ways. But then you have to, in the end, you have to settle on certain views. So, obviously now I'm just experimenting, and my camera's nowhere near where it was. But these are nice views. They are. Another thing that we could do. So I was clicking on the word right, and then I was clicking on the arrow, and I'm going around 90 degrees in, kind of what's an elevation, not a true elevation, but, or I could click inside the gray box at the corner and see a 45-degree view. Those are nice. And I can right-click and say Orient to View. And I could orient this to a section, for instance. And then I have to zoom in. And I have a section perspective now. So now it's my section has joined with a camera, essentially. So that's a whole nother kind of animal. These views could be descriptive, and you see my box is way big now. They could be descriptive, but sometimes I find if you crop too much in a small building like this, there's not much left to it, and it just kind of looks goofy. This is kind of interesting, showing the pools. But I guess sometimes when they tilt, which I could also do here, also kind of interesting. But like this pool, for instance, being cut down as much as it is, you know, maybe if we pull this back out and I don't think this would. That's just moving me away. If we came out and cut this at the stairs is what I was getting at. So let's just jump into the floor plan. Yeah, so if I pick this guy up, let's see if this guy here wants to change, and I bring it back to the stairs. And now, so this is like frozen in time here. All right, so that did not alter that. So it was just aligned to that. That's kind of interesting. Anyway, there's a lot to view here, a lot to experiment with. You know, you wouldn't want to. Let me just go back one more time. Orient to view, floor plans. So there we can see right on the top. Just want to quickly see the other options: floor plans, elevations, and our 3D views. So different ways to lock in different views. Interesting. What I was going to say is that I would not go overboard with the novelty of all of this, especially with a modest building. We don't need that many views, and I wouldn't change the style of the views to have so many on a couple of pages. You know, certain buildings will lend themselves to certain views and certain techniques. So pay attention to the building and bring out what's what shows off the building, what shows off and displays your work the best. Okay, thank you.